first step to our card is we're going to do this background here. Now I happen to know for my frame that this inside piece is 6 3/4, so I'm going to cut my cardstock accordingly. I'm going to show you both different versions, doing the one with the embossed stars as well as the one with the cutout stars with the gold vellum behind it. So I'm going to end up creating 2 different backgrounds, and I'll show you how to create the different versions. So if you don't want it to light up, hold on 1 second, let me clear. You don't want it to light up like that, you don't have to. If you want it to just have the embossing, you absolutely can do that as well. This just adds a little bit extra to it, but either one works perfectly. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this at 6 3/4 with the long side. Keep this because we're going to use it to create a distressed background for little snowman. So we want to keep that, and we're going to work on that. This part here, I am going to cut, so this is just over 5 inches here. So I'm going to cut one piece here, 5 inches, and that's going to be for my version where I'm going to die cut the stars out of the background. The other piece I'm just going to leave like this. It doesn't, you don't need to have a piece that's going to be the entire background because all of this is covering the back. It only needs to go to just behind the mountains there. All right, so we've got our pieces there. Let's start working on our background. And I'm only going to actually ink, even though I'm creating 2 to show you 2 different versions, I'm only actually going to ink one of them on this video, simply because they're both inked exactly the same way. You don't need to see me doing the exact same thing repeatedly. So my ink pads are freshly inked, so they've got a lot of ink on them. I'm using Oxide ink because I just like how creamy it is. I like how the different colors blend together, and it just has a more opaque look. Once we've inked our backgrounds, we're going to use some Perfect pearls to create kind of a Northern Lights look on it, just to add a little tiny bit of shimmer to the sky. It's not going to be very bold and bright, it's going to be very muted, and something that you actually don't necessarily see. Let's show you. You don't necessarily see it until you tilt the frame, so it's just going to be kind of a little bit of a surprise in there. All right, I see a few of the light blue streaks there, so I'm just going to go with the darker blue. The nice thing with the Oxide inks is they stay wet for a little while, so you can take your time with inking them, as well as the fact that if you happen to get a splotch in there, it's really easy to blend it out. I'm gonna get some of this light pink here and just add just a little touch of pink to go behind the mountains there. See how I've gotten a little bit of pink right there? I can use my pink one to blend it, or I can go back into my light blue one. The oxides just tend to be a little bit more forgiving when it comes to blending your inks. So I'm going to put the caps back on here, and then I'm going to do my perfect pearls. Now tap them onto the desk like this to make sure that your pearls are to the bottom. If you, by chance, you get some tucked into the little lid, they will go out on your surface and you'll end up wasting them. So if you do this, make sure that they're all on the bottom and you're not going to end up wasting a bunch of perfect pearls. So I'm tapping my brush in here, tapping the brush with my finger to get some of the excess off, and all I'm doing is dropping them onto my background here. These oxides will also stay wet for a little while longer. So once I have as many as I want, I'm just going to take my brush here, a little bit of a circular motion, kind of blend them a little bit into my ink there. What I tend to do before doing the Northern Lights is I tend to go and look at a bunch of pictures just to kind of see what they look like, to get it a little bit more realistic looking. They tend to be more on the green side, a little bit of pink and blue, so I'm doing mostly green. And then you can brush your brush onto just an old cloth, cleaning cloth, that sort of thing. And I'm gonna add a little bit of the pink to it. And again, I'm dipping my brush in and tapping the excess off. You can always add more to it, but if you get too much, it's kind of hard to get a lot of the excess off. You can get some of it off, but I always find it's much easier to build layers rather than accidentally get too much on there. Now I'm doing a little tiny bit of the purple. And I'm gonna do it right where, close to where the pink is. Now, this looks a little bit more bold right now, but it won't in a second. A lot of that is the powder that's on the top. And what we're going to do, some of it is loose powder. So we're just gonna take, we're gonna tap it, and we're gonna tap it with our fingers, and then, oh, there it went. To get the excess off, your best friend is gonna be a Swiffer duster. And that's going to take some of the excess off. And I just have one of these and I keep it with all my Perfect Pearls so that anytime I'm using them, I use that same duster. You don't need to have a new one for each and every time that you use it. Now the thing with Perfect Pearls is they have a binding agent in them that is activated with water. So you have to, once you're done what you're doing, you have to lightly mist it with water. I was a little bit heavy-handed with that. You don't necessarily need to do it quite as much as that, but there was just some places that got a little bit blotched. But I want to make sure that I get it completely covered so that it does set my Perfect Pearls. Now, the Distress Oxides will react with the water, and that's going to end up creating a little bit of a splotchy look on the sky. And I knew that was going to happen, and that's what I wanted to happen. And I quite like the way it looks. It kind of looks a little bit like stars, a little bit like galaxy, that sort of thing. I just tend to like that look. So this has to be 100% completely dry before we go to do the embossing or before we go to do the die cutting the stars out of there. So I'm going to set this aside to dry, and in the next video I'm going to show you how to do the background with the embossed stars like that. So we'll see you in the next one.